In 16th century India, a spiritual genius named Srila Rupa Gosvami authored a compact, precise guidebook outlining the exact steps required to achieve spiritual perfection. Across 5 centuries and half the globe, this ancient science of Bhakti Yoga was translated for the modern world by his successor, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The text opens with a stark observation about the human condition. We are naturally born as Gaudiyas, captives and servants of our own biological and mental impulses. This servitude shows up as a relentless physical restlessness. We are constantly driven by the endless demands of the tongue for rich food, the belly's desire to be full, and the intense impulses of the genitals. Then there are the mental urges. We are pushed by flashes of sudden anger and a compulsion to speak, even when we have nothing useful to say. The text compares this endless, useless talk to a croaking toad that serves to invite the snake of death. If we blindly obey these 6 biological and mental commands, our lives become a cycle of constant agitation, guaranteeing our spiritual death. The solution Rupa Goswami offers is not to artificially eradicate these drives. Instead, he introduces the concept of the dhairya, a sober, steady individual who learns to tolerate the immediate sting of these urges without acting on them. A master of the mind consciously channels these forces. The urge to speak is redirected toward discussing topics that uplift others. Anger, rather than being suppressed, is repurposed to protect the innocent or defend those who are being harmed. When you consciously direct these impulses rather than being directed by them, you transform from a servant of the senses into a master of them. According to the text, this self-mastery is the single prerequisite for making actual spiritual progress and guiding others. The guidebook then outlines 6 habits that actively destroy spiritual life. 2 the most prominent are collecting more wealth than we actually need and over-endeavoring for mundane, temporary achievements. We also drain our spiritual reserves through idle gossip and by spending too much time associating with worldly-minded people who have no interest in self-realization. To counter these traps, Rupa Goswami provides 6 nourishing behaviors. The very first is utsaha, which translates to enthusiasm. There is a common misconception that spiritual life means sitting quietly in idle meditation, but true devotion is a vibrant, highly practical activity. A practitioner must pursue self-realization with the same vigor, intelligence, and fierce patience that a dedicated entrepreneur applies to building a successful business. Spiritual advancement is not a passive waiting game. It requires a deliberate, enthusiastic effort to replace destructive material habits with focused, daily devotion. This enthusiastic effort is almost impossible to maintain alone. True devotion requires a strong, supportive network of relationships to thrive. To build this network, the text outlines Priti Lakshanam, 6 specific loving exchanges that practitioners must share with one another. These begin with physical, grounded actions, offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts in return, and sharing sanctified food, known as prasada. Beyond the physical, there are intellectual and emotional experienced peers, and submissively inquire to learn from their insights. Engaging in these 6 exchanges breaks down the walls of isolation. They are the lifeblood of the practice, binding individual seekers into a highly resilient spiritual community. Once the mind is steadied and this community is established, the way a practitioner perceives the physical world begins to shift. This shift is most apparent in how they view sacred geography, like the ancient village of Vrindavana and Govardhan Hill. To the ordinary eye, it is just rock and soil, but to the practitioner, these external spaces mirror deep internal spiritual states. The text uses the Ganges River as an analogy. During the rainy season, the river may be full of bubbles, foam, and mud, yet those who understand its nature know the water itself remains spiritually pure and unpolluted. In the same way, advanced spiritual vision allows a person to look past the superficial material flaws of their environment, recognizing the pure divine essence within both places and people. To achieve this vision, we have to cure the underlying disease. The Nectar of Instruction diagnoses humanity as suffering from avidya, the jaundice of ignorance. This visualization illustrates the primary symptom of this jaundice. When a person has physical jaundice, sweet things taste terribly bitter. Similarly, The disease of ignorance distorts our perception, making divine, spiritual truths seem unappealing or bitter to the modern mind. The specific medicine prescribed is the regular, careful chanting of the Maha Mantra. The text compares this chanting to a spiritual sugar candy that gradually destroys the disease of ignorance at its root, restoring our ability to taste the sweetness of truth. As Prabhupada states in his preface to the text, we can only begin to taste this nectar if we recognize our very first duty, taking active control of our own mind and senses. The path is laid out for us. By learning to tolerate our urges, by building community, and chanting these names, anyone can step out of the shadows of the senses, master the mind, and finally taste the nectar of instruction for themselves.